Booker T. Washington was born into slavery in Virginia on April 5, 1856. After the Civil War, his family moved to West Virginia. There he taught himself to read and write, but lived in poverty working in salt furnaces. He later joined the Hampton Normal Agricultural Institute, a free school for blacks. He graduated in 1875 and became a teacher. He was later chosen to speak at Hampton's graduation ceremonies, where he was offered a job teaching at Hampton. In 1881, Booker T. Washington instead was recommended to run the newly built Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. W.E.B. Du Bois was born on February 23, 1868 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He freely attended a school with whites, but in 1885 he moved to Nashville, Tennessee to attend Fisk University. It was there that he first encountered Jim Crow laws. At Fisk, he earned his bachelor's degree and went on to enter Harvard University for his master's degree. Afterward, he was selected for a study abroad program at the University of Berlin. While a pupil in Germany, he studied with social scientists of his day and was exposed to political perspectives that he used for the remainder of his life. W.E.B. Du Bois should be inducted in the Hall of Fame because of his influential effects on race relations in and outside of America and his belief for true social equality and integration for African Americans. Du Bois was the first African American to earn their Ph.D. from Harvard. Before Du Bois, no African American had ever broken this barrier in the educational system. This could pose some of the first steps towards equality in higher learning and in the progression in social equality. As a proponent of Pan-Africanism, Du Bois helped organize several Pan-African conferences to free African colonies from European powers. He insisted on racial equality, integration, labor issues, and to point Africans to key posts in African nations with the slogan, "Africa for the Africans." In 1909, he co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and served as the editor of its monthly magazine, The Crisis. And the association was made to show the dangers of racial prejudice and to promote economic equality, voting equality, and civil rights. Du Bois called his work The Souls of Black Folk, a collection of 14 essays. They adamantly opposed the idea of biological white superiority and vocally supported women's rights and equality. In The Souls of Black Folk, Du Bois addresses the paradoxes created by Booker T. Washington. The first paradox is it is impossible to compete in competitive markets without suffrage because it puts blacks at an unfair disadvantage. The second paradox is Washington tries to promote respect but still submits to civic inferiority and racism. The third paradox is one cannot advertise industrial schools over higher learning institutes if one is in charge of a higher learning institute. Now let's look at another source from modern day. Here's Daphne Campos on W.E.B. Du Bois. Why do you think W.E.B. Du Bois should be inducted in the Hall of Fame?
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame because he was an African American writer who was very influential and advocated for Pan-Africanism, and his contribution planted the seeds for the civil rights movement.
He was known for his political activism and was a vivid spokesman against Washington theories of economic independence instead of social equality. Du Bois promoted the idea that economic equality is tied to social inequalities and that both problems had to be fixed and not ignored. Booker T. Washington should be inducted into the Hall of Shame. While he fought for economic equality, he ignored any attempts for social equality for African Americans and believed economic independence would only be achieved with social separation. Washington believed political equality was not necessary. In attempts to gain favor with white leaders, Washington believed equal voting rights would make whites more oppositional to blacks in general, and racist voting laws should be accepted until blacks were valued as a community. In the Atlantic Compromise Address, he supported separation of whites and blacks to acquire economic independence. He supported white supremacy for, in turn, economic opportunity and equal representation under law. This speech turned the movement of social and economic equality for blacks into an either social equality or economic equality movement for blacks. Washington neutralized criticism by bribing newspapers to report false and flattering reports about those who criticized him to help maintain his image as leader of the intellectual and middle-class black communities. Booker T. Washington believed that blacks should have more industrial-based education and endorsed vocational schools instead of a classical learning curriculum. This puts blacks at a disadvantage for leadership roles or the advancement in higher education.
Washington accepted social segregation and the disenfranchisement of blacks and believed in subordination to whites. Washington believed any attempts at social equality would be a distraction and should instead be accepted as a fact of life. He carried on the platform on how instead the black community could be useful.
Don't take it just from me. Here are others' thoughts on the matter. Why do you think Booker T. Washington should be inducted into the Hall of Shame?
Because he believed that political equality was not necessary, and he also supported the separation of whites and blacks during the Atlanta Compromise Address. And finally, he was known for bribing newspapers to report false information over those who criticized.
W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington shaped the world we live in today. Good or bad, both impacted how we look at race relations today and changed the course of history. These arguments will be later brought up again in the fight against discrimination in the 1960s. With Malcolm X pursuit of black nationalism and Martin Luther King Jr.'s campaign against segregation and debate if separate can be